Imagine a millionaire woman, powerful and used to controlling everything in her life, but who needs something that money can't buy, a partner to deceive her family at a gala event. Sofia Navarro hires Miguel, an ordinary man, to pretend to be her husband. The plan seemed simple until unexpected feelings begin to emerge. What if a lie planned to last just one day became the beginning of something real? When masks fall, secrets are revealed, and the game of appearances threatens to fall apart, Sofia and Miguel will need to decide: keep pretending or risk everything for a love they never planned. Stay until the end, because what starts as a contract ends in a twist that will surprise you. Sofia Navarro looked out the huge window of her office, the phone pressed to her ear. On the other end of the line, her mother spoke with her usual critical tone. "Sofia, have you ever stopped to think about what people are going to say at the gala dinner? Everyone will be accompanied except you." Once again. Sofia took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Mum, I own my life and my company. I don't need to prove anything to anyone," he replied, maintaining a cold tone. "You may be very successful, dear, but that does not replace the image of stability. No matter what you say, people still value the fact that you have someone by your side." After hanging up, Sofia put the phone aside and massaged her temples. She knew her mother was exaggerating, but she also knew that appearances mattered in high society circles. With the family's gala dinner approaching, the pressure to showcase a perfect life felt overwhelming. Later, while reviewing contracts on his laptop, an email notification caught his attention. "Contract companions, escorts for special occasions." Sofia clicked on the link without thinking much. The idea seemed absurd, but at that moment, absurd was exactly the solution she needed. The next morning, she went to the agency's office. Sitting in a modern waiting room, Sofia crossed her legs and looked around. When they finally called her name, she was led to a room where a man was sitting, wearing jeans and a casual shirt. Miguel Torres. He smiled when he saw her enter. "So, you want a temporary husband?" he asked in a relaxed, almost amused tone. Sofia raised an eyebrow, in no mood for jokes. "I want someone who follows the rules without questions or drama," he replied directly. "Right." Miguel nodded, his defiant smile remaining. "And what would those rules be?" "Don't get more involved than necessary. Don't make up stories without consulting me. And most of all, remember this is just a contract." Miguel leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "It seems easy," he replied with a tone of someone who liked challenges. "I just hope you're not as strict with your family as you are with me." Sofia ignored the provocation, pulling a folder from her bag. "Here are the details. We need to appear convincing. You'll have to act like someone who's known me for years." "Understood, boss," he replied, winking playfully. When Miguel left, Sofia sat down again, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. The contract was signed. What could go wrong? The gala dinner was in full swing when Sofia and Miguel arrived. The Navarro family mansion was lit up, with a line of luxury cars parked at the entrance. Miguel offered Sofia his arm as they climbed the steps. "Are you ready to face your family?" he asked with a relaxed smile. "Just follow the plan and please don't improvise," Sofia replied, adjusting her dress. "I don't want surprises." As soon as they entered, all heads turned to the couple. Sofia's mother was the first to approach, her face lit up with a smile of relief. "Sofia, darling," she exclaimed, before casting a curious look at Miguel. "And this is Miguel, my husband," Sofia replied, squeezing his arm almost imperceptibly. "Finally," the mother said, examining him. "I was already thinking you would never get married." Miguel bowed slightly, displaying his natural charm. "It was difficult to win her over, but it was worth it," he said, with a smile that made Sofia's mother's eyes shine. Sofia took a quick look at Miguel, realizing that he was going beyond what they had agreed on. However, before he could rectify the situation, other family members began approaching, asking questions about their relationship. When they asked how they met, Miguel smiled and said, "It was in Paris. She was at the Eiffel Tower, and I knew right away that I needed to meet her." "Paris?" Sophia interrupted, unable to hide her surprise. "No, it was at a corporate event in New York." The silence that followed was short but uncomfortable. Miguel quickly corrected his tone. "Of course, New York was where we reconnected, but the Eiffel Tower will always be the special moment for me." He winked at Sophia, softening the situation. Later, as dinner was served, Miguel leaned towards Sophia. "You need to relax. The tension on your face will make someone suspicious," he murmured, with a smile on his face. "Maybe I'll relax when you stop making up stories," Sophia replied between her teeth. Despite his mistakes, Miguel won the family's attention with his charisma. Even Sophia, although reluctant, realized that he had a unique ability to deal with people. After dinner, while the two were talking alone on the terrace, Miguel looked at her. "You know, I understand why you're so tough, but that doesn't mean you need to do everything alone." Sophia frowned, but before she could respond, he gave her a soft smile. "I'm just saying, sometimes you should let someone surprise you." She didn't respond, but his words stayed in her mind longer than she would have liked. Dinner was nearing its end, and the soft music playing in the main hall created a relaxing atmosphere. Sophia escaped the crowd into the garden, taking deep breaths as she tried to organize her thoughts. It didn't take long for Miguel to appear at his side. "Running away from your own event?" he asked with a playful smile. "Just breathing," Sophia replied without looking at him. "I need a moment away from all eyes." Miguel leaned on the terrace railing, watching the night sky. "It must be difficult being you, always so impeccable, always so in control," he said, his voice soft. Sophia looked up, surprised by his sincerity. "It's not a choice," she replied, crossing her arms. "If I don't control everything, no one else will do it for me. That feels lonely," Miguel observed, turning to her. Sophia tried to look away, but he continued, "Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who need the most help. They just don't know how to ask," he added, his voice full of empathy. "Is this something you read in a self-help book?" Sophia joked, trying to mask the vulnerability he had touched. "No, it's something I learned by living," Miguel replied, without losing his light tone. "I know what it's like to try to carry the world on your shoulders." The silence between the two was interrupted by laughter coming from inside the house. Sophia sighed, looking at Miguel. "Why did you accept this job?" she asked, almost without realizing it. Miguel hesitated before answering, his expression more serious. "My younger sister is sick, the treatment costs are high, and I would do anything to help her." Sophia didn't expect that answer. He didn't seem to be making it up. For the first time, she saw something deeper in the man who, until that moment, had seemed so relaxed. "Sorry," she said, her voice soft. "I had no idea." "You don't need to say sorry." Miguel smiled slightly. "Everyone has their reasons for doing what they do." As they returned to the room, Miguel suddenly stopped and grabbed Sophia's arm. "Look, I know this is just a job, but you're more amazing than you think. Maybe someone has already told you this, but I'll repeat it," he said, looking directly into her eyes. Before Sophia could respond, music started playing, and Miguel pulled her into an impromptu dance. She hesitated, but eventually gave in. His touch was firm but gentle, and the moment felt too real to be part of a contract. Then it happened, a brief but intense kiss that took them both by surprise. Sophia walked away, confused. "That wasn't in the contract," she said, trying to catch her breath. Miguel smiled, still holding her hand. "Maybe some things are better without contracts." She stared at him for a moment, not knowing how to respond. Something had changed, and she couldn't ignore it. The day after dinner started with a charged atmosphere. Sophia was in her office, buried in papers, but unable to concentrate. Last night still lingered in his mind, especially that kiss. However, her phone vibrated, breaking her out of her reverie. It was a message from his mother. Daniel seems to have doubts about Miguel. He's asking a lot. Sophia sighed deeply, feeling a wave of irritation. It was typical of Daniel, his always suspicious cousin, to question anything that was out of the ordinary. He decided to ignore it, but he knew the problem was just beginning. Hours later, as the guests walked around the garden, Sophia saw Daniel approaching Miguel. She watched from a distance, trying to maintain her composure as her curiosity grew. Daniel, with his typical inquisitive expression, smiled in a way that only increased the tension. "So, Miguel, how exactly did you and Sophia meet?" Daniel asked, crossing his arms. "It was an interesting meeting, to say the least," Miguel replied with his usual carefree tone. "One of those things that only fate explains." "Fate? Interesting choice of words." Daniel laughed, but his eyes were sharp. "Because, I did some research on you, and honestly I didn't find anything convincing." Miguel kept his smile, but Sophia saw his posture become more rigid. He shrugged, trying to deflect. "Maybe because I'm not used to showing off online," he replied, still in a light tone. "Or maybe because you're not who you say you are." Daniel shot, getting closer. Sophia felt her chest tighten. It was already too much. She crossed the garden and interrupted the conversation, her voice steady. "What's going on here, Daniel?" "I'm protecting our family," Daniel replied, pointing to Miguel. "This man is not trustworthy, Sophia. How can you let someone like that get close?" Before Sophia could respond, Miguel raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. "He's right," Miguel said, his voice suddenly serious. "I'm not what you expected. I'm here because I accepted a job, and nothing more." The revelation made Sophia's blood run cold. She tried to control her expression, but the surprise was evident. Miguel turned to her, his eyes sincere but full of regret. "I didn't want it to be like this. I didn't want to expose you to that," he continued. "But I think it's best to end this farce now." Daniel looked at Sophia with a triumphant smile. But Sophia just ignored him, focused on Miguel, who took a step back as if he were ready to leave. "You don't need me, Sophia. Never needed it," he said, with a sincerity that completely disarmed her. Without waiting for a response, Miguel turned and started walking towards the gate. Sophia remained still, her mind spinning. She felt a lack of control, something she rarely experienced. Daniel approached with a satisfied look. "I warned you, Sophia. You can't trust just anyone." "Get out of here, Daniel," Sophia replied, her voice cold as ice. Going up to the bedroom, Sophia closed the door and fell onto the bed. The image of Miguel leaving remained in his mind. He hadn't tried to justify himself or manipulate the situation, just went away. For the first time in years, Sophia felt something she couldn't name. As the night went on, his thoughts became clearer and clearer. Miguel wasn't perfect, but he had been real in a way that no one else had been. And deep down, she knew it scared her. In the solitude of her room, Sophia finally admitted to herself she missed him. The wind blew lightly as Sophia walked through the mansion's gardens, lost in thought. The tension from dinner still hung in the air, but it wasn't the scandal or gossip that occupied his mind. It was Miguel. He had left without looking back, and for the first time Sophia felt that someone had taken with them something she didn't know she had, her heart. She was interrupted by the sound of footsteps. When she turned around, she saw Miguel walking towards her. He looked tired, but there was a determination in his eyes. "What are you doing here?" Sophia asked, crossing her arms in an attempt to hide her surprise. "We need to talk," Miguel replied, stopping in front of him. I'm not leaving until I say what I need." Sophia let out a sigh, fighting the emotions rising in her chest. "You said enough last night," she said, trying to sound cool. "He left, and now he thinks he can just show up." "I left because I thought it was right," Miguel replied, his voice firm. "But I realized I was wrong." He took a step forward, closing the distance between the two. "Sophia, from the beginning, this was just a contract for you, something planned, controlled. But for me, it became something much bigger." She tried to look away, but he continued. "I thought I could move on with my life after that, but the truth is that you changed everything. You showed me that I can be more than the circumstances that brought me here, and you think saying these things will change what happened?" Sophia asked, her voice shaking. Miguel gave a sad smile. "I don't expect anything to change. I just want you to know the truth." Before Sophia could respond, the guests began to leave the house, drawing attention to the scene in the garden. Miguel looked around, aware that everyone was watching. "It looks like we have an audience," he said with a light tone. "But everything is fine. I have nothing to hide." He turned his attention to Sophia, his eyes locked on hers. "I know I'm not the kind of man you expected, but I also know that I'm the only one who can love you the way you deserve." The silence was broken by murmurs from the guests, but Sophia didn't care. Something inside her finally loosened, and she took a step forward. "Miguel, you are the only one who saw me as I really am. No masks, no expectations. I didn't want to admit it, but I need you." She paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "Not under the contract. For you." Miguel smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his face. "Then maybe we can start again. No contracts this time." She nodded, feeling tears forming. "No contracts," replied Sophia. The guests applauded spontaneously, but for Sophia and Miguel, the world seemed to reduce to the two of them. As he held her, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. That relationship that started as a game of appearances was now something real. Sophia knew that with Miguel by her side, she was ready to face anything, because finally, she was no longer alone.